This is the Rich Dad Radio Show. The good news and bad news about money. Here's Robert Kiyosaki.
Hello, Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. And today I have a very special guest, somebody I've looked up to for years. And his name is Peter Grandich. And he's the author of the book, Confessions of a Former Wall Street Whiz Kid. And the reason that's important is because I speak for all the boomers out there, 1946 to 1960. Whatever their retirement from boomers are. But the boomers had the easiest. We had the easiest sleigh ride in history. You know, so we graduate from college, you buy a house, you become a multimillionaire, you put your money in a 401k, the stock market goes up. And then what's hanging in the background there, Peter, is the balloon. And beneath the balloon is the US economy. And the balloon represents the balloon that the Fed, the Treasury, and Wall Street blew into this huge bubble. So today is my honor to have Peter Grandich here. Like I said, I've often said the definition of intelligence is, if you agree with me, you're intelligent. And Peter's a very intelligent man. We want a little bit of time. So Peter, let's start with why you wrote the book, Confessions of a Former Wall Street Whiz Kid. Another thing is I want to thank you for supporting my friend Donald Trump, talking about what Elon Musk did with Twitter. And we're fighting back. We have to fight back for our country and our freedoms here. So anyway.
Well, I wrote the book because the book included my downfalls as well as successes. A lot of books that come out are all about one way, and my life has been a two-way street in almost 40 years around the financial service market, and with some very big bumps and even some danger zones. And so I spoke about it. I was a young man that really didn't finish college, wasn't intended to be in the stock market. I was a warehouse manager. And a lot of things happened, made money, lost money, made money, lost money, and also suffered, serious depression and other things that a lot of people don't speak about, but I felt the movement to share about that. And you'd be surprised how many people write back after they read it and have similar stories. So I feel it served its purpose in that regard.
Yeah, so I have tremendous respect for Peter because he doesn't bullshit, doesn't BS. So Peter, let's for now speak to a generational issue called the boomers, because we're the first ones with a 401k. And that led to this here called pensions and defined benefits and all this stuff. And also we're old enough so that in 1971, Nixon took the dollar off of this here. It's called gold. And this happened in 1964 when I was 17. This is the last real silver quarter. So in 64, I think Lyndon Johnson came on the air and says we can no longer back up our coins with silver. And in 1971, Nixon says we're going to take the dollar off the gold standard. And the economy blew up just in time for the boomers to get rich.
All on the back, Robert, of printed money, which has no real backing.
Same.
So I never thought, Robert, I'm 39 years at this. I never thought I would say what I'm about to say to you. We have 33 trillion with a T debt, not counting the unfunded liabilities of Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. And what I never thought I'd see, we used to say a politician talking about Social Security might as well put his foot on the third rail. That was a saying because it was suicide. Well, that's gone. They now are openly from both sides of the aisle starting to address not only the Social Security issue, but what they're going to have to do with Medicare and Medicaid. So in what I think is going to be the most dysfunctional Congress in modern era, if you think about the last 2 years, what the Democrats were doing and all the craziness that went, the night before our election, it looked like we were told by the pundits, the Republicans are going to clearly win. They're going to get things straightened out. And it took them 20 votes just to get their own speaker. And I don't know what he gave away to get that speakership. So I really think this is going to be another 2 years of accusations, charges, while all the things that need to be addressed economically and socially are just going to be left hanging, and it's just going to get worse. It can't possibly get better under those circumstances.
Yeah, and we did blow into the biggest bubble in world history, what Peter was talking about, and that's the 33 trillion doesn't count the unfunded, like Social Security, Medicare, now student loans, and all this stuff. So what? And then, by the way, my friend Kevin McCartney is a friend of mine, and when he was in town, he got 10 Rich Dad Poor Dad books so he can hand out to his members of Congress. They need help. You know what I mean? So what would you? And by the way, and we're studying your video next week as a company. We study videos, and your comments. I forget who you were talking to.
I think it was Kitco. I think you saw me on,
Kitco,
Robert.
yeah. So we're going to have you talk to our group via Kitco. So what would you say, first of all, to the boomers who are hoping the stock market and all this is going to save them?
Well, they're going to have a very big challenge. You know, we had a whole generation grow up on learning how to drive on a one-way street. And I always go back to my driver's education day when the first time we got to what they call a roundabout or a traffic circle, I got petrified. And that's what happened. In 2022, finally, reality sunk home, and both on professionals and investors who were just used to it always going one way suffered greatly. And the sad part about it is, Robert, in the work that I still do technical, is we came down a lot without a lot of stock changing hands. And what that means to me is there's still a lot of people sitting with what they had before the market declined. Now, these financial advisors can get away with a year telling them, hold on, it always comes back, hang in there. But if we don't get enough this year, a comeback, or worse yet, a decline, which both you and I concur believe is coming, there's going to be a lot of selling that can really drive the market lower. And at a time when the retirement crisis is coming to bear, a third of Americans have no savings. A third of Americans have very little savings, and only a small, rather up group on the top of the pyramid have enough for retirement. And that's going to be, again, people seeking the government at a time when they have to reduce benefits, not add benefits. So there's a whole bunch of things we could spend probably hours talking about, Robert, that are negative. But I think what's important is the stock market still has lots of risk. The place that you and I liked and liked very much is doing very well, the gold market. I think that's going to go a lot higher. You only need to know that central banks have bought a record amount of gold. Now, they don't speculate. They're not buying it to trade it or something. They're buying it for a specific reason, a reason we may not know yet. Now, I speculate it's going to be used to eventually back different currencies, and we're going to see the US dollar fall as a reserve currency. But gold to me, is a much better bet at this point in time than stocks or even bonds.
I think so too. And again, as the author of Confessions of a Former Wall Street Whiz Kid, what was your motivation for writing that book?
Again, I just felt it was an honest evaluation of a life of a young man that didn't even finish high school, ended up on Wall Street, managed to make some calls that the Wharton School of Business guys didn't, got a little fame, went to his head, managed to lose, make money, and lose again. And you just don't hear people talk about, you would never know if you watch a financial network that any of those folks that come on actually lose money. And so it was more of a real candid thing. And I find that people appreciate that. And it's just and I think it goes to what the good Lord for me calls me to do.
So what was the confession though?
Well, the confession was some of the things that I pushed the gray envelope on, some of the getting caught up in the greed factor, which is an immense attraction on Wall Street. Money is one of the biggest magnets of all time to pull you away from goodness. And I did, and I shared that. And you get a lot of people coming back to you, especially the boomers who've gone through it, saying, boy, I never heard somebody share like that, but it also happened to me. So That was really the main reason. It wasn't to sell a lot of copies or anything of that nature, but it was just to tell a story that is kind of unique. There's not a lot of high school dropouts getting half famous on Wall Street, Robert. They're all Wharton School or big colleges and things. And here was this kid that, didn't have 5-syllable words, and somehow he made a life on Wall Street around it too.
Yeah, I heard rumor that you're the real Gordon Gekko in, in the movie Wall Street. The classic line is "Great is."
Greed is good. Well, the interesting thing about that movie was we thought at that time things were bad in terms of markets, economies, and things of that nature. But it's 20 times worse since that movie's been made. And there's many, many Gordon Geckos out there. And we saw some of them come out in the crypto market. And I don't think we've seen the end of that yet. I don't think we've gotten to the bottom of the real mess that industry is. Now, I was real negative on it. It fell, but I also said I felt it was going to be like the internet bubble. There'll be a shakeout, but eventually something will come out of it, better companies, and move towards something more sane. And so I think that industry is not dead, but I think it's going to take a while before it can really raise itself up again and get the respect that that it really needs to get in order to be profitable again.
Right, but it's a cancer. And then what this guy Ted Siddell, he's the biggest whistleblower on Wall Street. I mean, in the pension market. And the reason he and I are good friends is when I got out of the Marine Corps, my poor dad wanted me to fly for United Airlines because my classmates went on to become pilots. And that's when ERISA came out, 74, and all this Employee Retirement Income Security Act, which set up the pensions. And what this guy Ted Siddell says, that a lot of the people that were on Wall Street and in the state pension funds, they now are on Biden's staff. So it has gone to the highest levels of America right now. This guy, Joe Biden, the Biden crime family, I'll probably get taken off for that one. But he hired the very people that ripped off the pensions.
Well, I think that's another issue that's going to become more. No, the Biden situation is real. This is not something they're going to be able to sweep under the rug. And I think that is also going to play up and again, get Congress caught up in areas where they're not focusing on the social and economical things and the hard decisions that they need to make.
Yeah. And so I'm letting everybody know is that we do Zoom calls every Thursday. We have one at 8 o'clock in the morning and one at 4 in the afternoon for different groups. And you will be the star of the show next Thursday because the interview you did with Peter Lim and Kitco was great info because you don't hold anything back.
Well, that makes two of us, Robert.
I know. So anyway, I appreciate what you say and what we do here. But when we come back, I'm going to ask you to speak, number one, to my generation, boomer generation. What would you do? Because so many people expect the Fed, don't fight the Fed. The Fed's got your back, is going to bail them out. And they don't know how pervasive the theft has gone. And so we're going to do our best to give some people some brightness of the future. The light at the end of the tunnel could be a train, but you can dodge the train if you know what's coming. So we come back, we'll be talking more to Peter Grandich, author, Confessions of a Former Wall Street Whiz Kid, and he knows what goes on behind the scenes. Again, I could plug this book, came out in 2020, and a lot of those, not Wall Street whiz kids, but also our government whiz kids went to work for the Biden administration. So ladies and gentlemen, we're in serious trouble. And that's why I commend you. The last interview I saw with you, you were talking about my friend here, the Donald, saying that social media took him off. I mean, Sarah knows we've been taken off a number of times for saying certain things like Trump is my friend. We live in a different world, don't we, Peter?
Yes, it is. It's certainly different than the 40 years ago when I entered.
Yeah. So we come back, I'm going to do your best and give advice especially to somebody who thinks the Fed and Wall Street is going to save you. That's who we'll be coming back to. So we'll be right back.
Feeling powerless over current events and your financial future? Financial freedom is your freedom. Robert Kiyosaki is the best-selling author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Over 40 million people have taken Robert's advice. Now it's your turn. Attend Robert's free virtual wealth building event. Claim your free access now at richdadfree.com. Don't wait, access is limited. Go to richdadfree.com. That's richdadfree.com.
Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. And the one thing that's good about getting older, you don't have to study history too hard because you lived through it. And this here is a coin from a friend of mine, Dana Samuelson from Austin, Texas. This is a real silver quarter. But in 1964, when I was 17 or 16 years old, this quarter went to being fake. And then what happened in 1971, Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard. So I bought one of these things. I flew behind enemy lines in the Marine Corps, and I bought one of these things, a Krugerrand in South Africa. I paid $50 for it. Today, that same ounce of gold is $2,000. So that's why in Rich Dad Poor Dad, we say the savers are losers. And this here, just to prove, practice what I preach, this is my gold mine in Utah, the richest gold mine in the world. And the last gold mine I started before that, Peter, was in China. And guess who owns the mine now?
Well, mining has become a very difficult thing in the world. 30 years ago, you could go to a globe, spin it, put your finger on it, and go mine there and not worry about it. Now, many parts of the world, it's become very risky. We just saw in Panama, where Panama just decided after a company spent a few billion to build a mine, that they're going to charge them a 20% royalty, not a 2% royalty. And so one of the things that's going to happen is we're going to see coming more back to North America looking for metals. But the other thing is everybody's talking about this great electrical expansion. Everything's going to be electric. And never mind that still some of the infrastructure in the United States was put up by Thomas Edison. The fact is how they're going to provide all of that. You're going to need metals to provide all of that. And that there hasn't been a lot of money
You're going to need metals.
Yeah, you're going to need metals for all these products that everybody sees that we're going to need, electrical cars and all. And there's just not available. And so we're going to have a commodities boom, irregardless of what economies do, simply because there's a great shortage. And where the real problem is in the rare minerals, because these special minerals that are used in a lot of technology gadgets, China basically controls that supply. And I don't think they're the best of friends of the United States, Robert. I might be way off on that, but I just don't think they're great friends or have our best interests at heart.
Yeah. And then again, this is from my friend Dana Samuelson from Austin, Texas. His company, I'll give his company a shout. It's American Gold Exchange in Austin, Texas. But he says, tell people to bite the bullet. This is a pure silver bullet here. And I was at the supermarket yesterday, and all these women were asking me, the clerks, what do I do? And I said, get some silver. You know, this here is real silver. It's about $30. All of you can afford $30. So that's what I'm saying to people, because I believe most people, even in poorest countries, can afford $30. But they're so used to taking fake money. That's my concern.
Well, Robert, one of the great beefs that I've had with Main Street, Wall Street, is they have always purposely looked at gold and silver as kryptonite. Don't touch it, don't go near it, because it directly conflicts with what they basically sell all day, paper assets, stocks and bonds. And for a couple thousand years, gold has worked. And that was why when people were telling me it was a relic and you better own crypto and all that, I kind of went with history, and sure enough, we're watching a gold market moving towards new all-time highs sometime, I think, this year, with central banks being the record buyers. Why are central banks buying up gold? It's not because they're looking to trade it. So they're seeing a big change coming monetarily. Saudi Arabia just announced that it's willing to take other currencies other than the dollar. The BRIC nations have talked about a new currency that would have a commodities and gold backing. So like I said, I think gold really has a good 6 to 12 months minimum with silver ahead of itself.
Yeah, this, ladies and gentlemen, this is 1 ounce of pure silver. It's about $30 today. This is January 2023. And I would say almost everybody in the free world can afford one of these. But most people would rather have fake money or Federal Reserve dollars and stuff like this. So what advice would you have for the boomers right now? Would you be counting on a 401k?
Well, first of all, I think a less is more attitude. I think most people have gotten overextended. They have, and I'm not talking about the extremely wealthy, Robin. I'm just talking about the working class Americans that are out there, and they've bought into this debt is okay kind of thing, where the guy comes on the commercial and goes, "You get 5% back if you use this card," but meanwhile you spent 95% on something you probably don't need in order to get the 5% back. And I just think that attitude, when I sit with people with financial planning and all this, some don't want to hear it, but I think you're going to have to pull in your strings. I think there's going to be very, very tough times. You're certainly not, the retirement plans that have been made with 8, 10, 12% returns, hopefully from the stock market, I think are in trouble. And therefore, those people who were counting on that or living a lifestyle based on that happening are in for a rude awakening. And that's all going to play into this mishmash of government's going to be attacking entitlement programs at a time when more and more people are going to need them. If you want to know how much difficult America has gotten, Robert, and this is special to me because I work with some of them, go to any food bank in anywhere in the United States. And what you'll find in here is not only is demand greatly up, but working class people, even middle class, are showing up because that's the only way they can get by. And also, when you have all things like that, and you get somebody on TV saying the Dow's going back to 40,000 and, load up and all that type of stuff, I find it very, very hard for fundamental factors to support an argument like that.
Good. And the other thing too is you look at Bernanke after 2008, he created this, that's a balloon. He created the biggest balloon, I think, in history. And they gave him the Nobel Prize for it.
Well, if you think about it, the original creator of all this, the guy that started the trouble, was Greenspan. He was the one that started this crazy printing. He is so adamantly talking about the negatives of it now. I think he realizes the monster that's been created, and as you described, the big balloon that's going to bust and bust big time.
And that's the economy hanging underneath of it. So for boomers, would you, if all they have is they have a 401k in a house and they just keep raising interest rates, the house comes down too. It's an everything bubble. So what would you say to the people who are, let's say, in their 50s today? Would you be counting on a 401k or a pension?
Well, the big battle is going to be demographics, Robert. We're going to get to a point where younger people are going to say, wait a minute, hold on. This guy's 75, 80 years old, and he wants to get a heart transplant, and I got to pay for it through Medicare and all, and you're going to charge me X amount. Oh, and that's coming. And it's not just in the United States. In Japan, within 20 years, they expect one person working for every person retired. Even China announced a decline in its population and the aging of it. The aging of humans is the next big story worldwide.
Yeah, and the good news is we're all going to live longer, Peter.
But there runs, Robert, for the lower to middle class, they don't have the money to support and pay that to go. And it really opens up, a Pandora's box of, where do you cut it off? where do you stop social services at? And again, at a time when I'm telling you, if you thought the last 2 years in Congress was crazy, just watch this next 2 years.
So I'll just say it again. Listen to Peter Grandich, is the author of the book Confessions of a Former Wall Street Whiz Kid who he didn't graduate from Harvard with everybody else. And always remember this. I was at my supermarket saying, ladies, this is $30 today. This is 1 ounce of pure silver. They go, but they'd rather have the paper money. So that's that they've been brainwashed. What do you say to the millennial generation? How to prepare?
I think everything is not as simple as what the last few years appeared. If you think about 1928 and how people were speculating at that point in time, what people did in 2021 was 100 times worse. And so many people overextended. And a lot of the youth, particularly, got into all these different cryptocurrency coins and were sold about, Bitcoin went from this to that. When they used that argument about Bitcoin going from a couple dollars higher, there wasn't a lot of people buying it at that point, and it got to that height. Where most of the money was spent is near the top, and unfortunately, huge losses. And I don't think they're coming back anytime soon, Robert. So I just think that, like you just said, I think hard things that work anywhere you go. You can go with those coins and go anywhere and get something. There may come a day when you can go with $1 and somebody's going to go, no, thank you. No, thank you.
We're not too far away, I don't think.
No, I think Robert, you're a little bit older than me, but I think even in our lifetime, it can happen. I think that's how close. That's why the central banks are getting ready for this major monetary change and all. And so the demise, or at least the decline of the US dollar, is imminent, meaning it can only be just a few years away.
Yeah. So we've addressed the boomers, possibly Gen X and millennials. But if you're a parent, grandparent, or great-grandparent, what would you say to a kid today? Because I have so many kids coming up to me, what do I do?
Well, your room is still here because it's going to be very difficult. That's why a lot of younger people are moving back home. It's come very, very difficult out there. The employment situation, listen, we just had a week ago an employment number and people scratching their head. Everybody's laying off. How do they do this? Well, in the payroll number, if you work 3 part-time jobs, they'll count you as 3 people employed, but you're really working 3 part-time jobs to make 1 living. Okay. And so the employment out there is not readily available. The inflation is a lot higher than people said. Listen, all you have to do, you said you're at the supermarket. If you want to know where inflation is, go to the supermarket and remember what you bought a year ago for $100 and what are you buying today for $100. It's a lot worse. And that's why I don't see the Fed giving up on staying tight. This magical pivot that everybody talks about in what I call is a don't worry, be happy crowd on Wall Street, Robert. You can throw these guys off the top of the Empire State Building and all the way down, they say the same thing. Hey, so far, so good. And they have convinced people that there's going to be this pivot and the Fed's going to go from taking his foot off the brake and fast down on the gas pedal. And that's just not going to happen. They just can't conceivably do it. And that's where the disappointment's going to be. And that's what I think where the selling comes. And I think we at least have to go down to the pandemic lows, if not lower, before any reasonable valuations can justify some sort of equity ownership again. Certainly for me anyway.
Yeah. Well, you hit on one thing my mother made me do. She made me go shopping for food. And back in the 60s, my lunch cost 25 cents. And she says, I want you to provide, so she gave me $1.25. That was 5 days of lunch and a quarter. And she says, I want you to provide lunch for yourself at 25 cents a day. It was one of the hardest, she was just basically showing me what she had to do every single day to balance the shopping basket. So for 5 days, I ate hot dogs And then she charged me for the relish that I took out of the refrigerator. So it was a harsh lesson as a kid in high school, you know.
Well, the food price situation is not only due because of supply, but the people who produce the food are having such high expenses. The reason the eggs are going up so high, because the guys that have the eggs, the hens, they cost them so much money to feed them and get them to come out. Now, so food, I think, it always amazes me when they say, hey, inflation minus energy and food was only up 0.3. And I always say, if I can get by not using energy or food, that's pretty good. But unfortunately, I can't. And so I don't think that inflation number, I don't think we'll ever see, Robert, the 2% number. That number is
Gone.
that's just never coming back again.
Yeah. And what happened when Biden took the Keystone XL pipeline off production, I was selling, I don't have stocks. I only sell the real stuff. So I was selling oil at $30 a barrel. It went to $130 a barrel. And I knew at that time, I knew what Biden was up to. He's going to destroy our middle class. They can't survive today. So
that's the big challenge. It's very, very difficult.
Yeah. And so that's why this book here, Who Stole My Pension, with Ted Siddell, myself, Biden took a lot of those guys who were ripping people off on the state pensions and he put them on his board.
The other thing about pensions, and we have this problem here in New Jersey, is the great underfunded pensions.
Yes, that's
people that think when they come to retirement that the money's there, they're grossly underfunded. And that's an issue too, that people are expecting a certain amount of dollars that just may not be there.
So the final words, excuse me, my phone is ringing, but why would somebody want to read Confessions of a Former Wall Street Whiz Kid? What will they learn that they may not know now?
That you could actually lose money in investing. There aren't many books that say that. So that's one thing I can tell you that book says. Wow. It's a human interest story. I battled depression, loss of money, all the things that most people don't speak about, but happens in real life. That's what I speak about. Yeah.
So Peter, I want to thank you for doing what you continue to do. Like I said, next week, you're going to be our guest speaker through we do 2 presentations internally in our company, and you're going to be our guest speaker, you and David Lim from Kitco. And I like what you do, because the definition of intelligence is, if you agree with me, you're intelligent.
Well, let me say something on the record that I said off the record. One of the greatest accolades I have for you, and you have many of them, is you don't have to know and guess where Robert is standing. You speak with no rock to hide under, and you're absolutely adamant. And there are many people, especially on these talking heads on Wall Street, who are lost without words like if, but, perhaps, maybe, on the other hand. And so let me just say, if we never get to speak again, let me just say that is, to me, one of the most adoring things that I like about you, that you speak your mind.
Oh, thank you. I only talk and speak what I do. I don't talk about what I don't know. Unlike those guys on CNBS, that's not CNBS.
CNBS, I like that.
CNBS, they'll come up and they'll pump. I mean, Peter, will guys get up there and pump their own stock?
Well, they speak their book, and when's the last time you saw somebody bearish on that network?
So once again, it's Peter Grandich. He's going to be our guest, our internal guest next week. And we'll always discuss what the person says, because we learn more that way. And again, please get his book, Confessions of a Former Wall Street Whiz Kid, so you can learn about what goes on behind the scenes. So Peter, thank you very much.
Thank you, Robert. God bless you.
Thank you. And for all of you who are watching, we'll be right back with Sarah and my comments. Thank you, Peter Grandich.
Thank you.
Hello, hello, hello. Robert Kiyosaki. We're back. With special thanks to Peter Grandich. He doesn't BS around. And it's refreshing for me to hear that. And once I got a little history here, this was 1964. This went to fake money, the US quarter. And then in 1971, the dollar went to fake instead of this. So that's why I'm pretty adamant about, you gotta know what fake and real is. So Sarah, any comments about what you picked up from Peter?
Yeah, I like the position that Peter comes from. I don't know if everybody knows, but Peter has a financial planning company, right? So he helps with wealth and retirement. So when he speaks about the average person, that's who his customers are. The moms and pops. He's not dealing with billionaires and millionaires with huge retirement, outlook. And so when he talks about the dire future and that it's going to be rough, he's speaking from a place of personal experience. And the other thing we learned from Bert Doman, right? Look who your teachers are and what cycles have they lived through, because they really understand a cycle of a market. And that's what I get from Peter as well, is he's lived through the ups and downs, not only as an advisor, let's say, but somebody who he has suffered personal loss in the stock market. He knows what it's like to get to the highs and suffer low lows. So, I just appreciate his perspective and the warning. He's not always doom and gloom, but that seems to be the theme of 2023 is we're in for a big hurt. And so now's the time to really focus on buying the hard assets that you speak about all the time.
Yeah. And this here, ladies and gentlemen, is real 99% pure silver. Today, you can buy it for about $30. And that's why Rich Dad, Poor Dad said the rich don't save money. And the rich, your house is not an asset. Hey, look at what's going to kill the boomers is the retirements and their house. And they save fake money. This is real money. You can still get it for $30. So anyway, thank you all for listening to the Rich Dad Radio Show. Great show there, Sarah. Thanks for getting him on so early.
Absolutely.
Okay, so thank you. And
thanks. We'll talk soon.
Thanks.